A very good evening to all our viewers. I'm Anant Kamath. I'll be your host for today's webinar. There's possibly no place on Earth which is as remote and harsh as the continent of Antarctica. There are very few people who have actually set foot on this remote island, and Dr. Ajit Huilgol is one of the fortunate few. He spent nearly a month there and came back home with over 30,000 photographs. In today's presentation, we will get to see penguins, sea lions, glaciers, and many other things from this remarkable place. But before we start our presentation, there are very key announcements that we have. Here you go. Next Sunday, 5:30 p.m., that is 20th December, we will have a presentation titled Evolving as an Artist by Dr. Hitesh Patel, where he will be presenting astrophotography with a twist. This is going to be a very interesting session, so please don't miss it. The day after that, which is on 21st December, Monday, we'll have a presentation titled Along the Road 2020 by Ricardo Bussi, who is the FIAP president. It will be on Google Meet, and you will receive more information within a day or two. Becoming a YPS member is very easy. You can visit YPS Bengaluru website or scan this QR code to take that will take you directly to the membership page. The payments are fully digitized, and we are present on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube with the same handle, that is YPS Bengaluru. So do like, subscribe, and press the bell icon to get notifications. To get notifications on the YPS programs on your phone, subscribe to YPS Bengaluru by sending a message START, START, along with your full name to 9513 YPSBLR, which is 9513 977 257. Coming to today's webinar, we have a very multi-talented personality with us, Dr. Ajit Huilgol. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Namaskara to everyone.
Before Dr. Ajit takes us on a trip to the Ice Age, let me give you a quick introduction to our viewers. Dr. Ajit Huilgol is a well-known kidney transplant surgeon based in Bangalore. He performed the very first successful kidney transplant in Karnataka back in 1983, and since then he has performed over 2,500 kidney transplants. He has received many awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award given by the Nephrology Association of Karnataka. He also is a co-founder of Karnataka Nephrology Transplant Institute, also called as KANTI, along with Dr. S. Sundar. Though he has been fond of nature and wildlife since his young age, he really got interested into wildlife photography only from 2007. And within a year, in 2008, he got his ARPS. Then in 2009, he received the Runners-Up Award from the prestigious BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year for the mammals behavior category. He was also a cricket commentator in English on All India Radio from 1972 to 2005. And he was probably one of the youngest cricket commentators in English during those times. He also lent his voice for Women's World Cup in 1997. He also acted in a critically acclaimed movie called Freaky Chakra that made it to many international film festivals. Then there is one very interesting incident which I would like to share with all our viewers. In June 2001, one of his image and a video of a large male tiger caught in a jaw trap in Nagarhole Tiger Reserve led to the arrest of over 40 poachers of the notorious Sansar Chand gang. For this, he was made a special police officer in the CID Forest Wing by Government of Karnataka. Wow, sir. Me personally, and also the viewers would be very much interested to know more about what this incident was. What had happened that day?
Well, I'll try to cut that story short. It was late in the evening. on the 31st of May, if I remember right, in 2001. It was drizzling slightly. We were near Tiger Tank and we heard alarm calls. We went in the direction of the alarm calls and where the langurs were looking down, from the tree perch. And there in a bamboo clump, this is along the power line. If all of you have been to Kabini, I'm sure a number of you have had. It was along the power line, and on the left was this bamboo clump, and in that bamboo clump was a huge male tiger. As we were taking photographs, we noticed that each time he moved, there was a sound of a rattling of a chain, of a heavy chain, wondering what that was. Then we found that his left front paw was caught in a jaw trap. This apparently had been set by these poachers, maybe for a tiger, maybe for whatever other animal they were trying to poach. But this being a huge male tiger, and because the ground was a little soft because of the recent rains, he had pulled out the entire peg, which had been driven into the ground, and which was then tied to the chain. So the entire peg and the chain and the jaw trap are all, being dragged along by him. We then had to complain to the forest department, and of course, it took a very, very long time trying to convince anyone that there had been a jaw trap. Mr. Ullas Karant was called to the studio, where I went and complained, finally saying that, look, there is this tiger, nobody's taking any action. Please do something about it. There was only Star News at that time. There was no NDTV then. Star News was somewhere in the Kant area. And I went and met Mr. Taras Tarapurwala, who was one of the broadcasters then, one of the speakers. So he took it up, wanted the confirmation from Ullas Karant. Dr. Karant came, confirmed that it was Kabini indeed. And then it went viral, as they say nowadays, but those days there was no such term. Then the field director, Project Tiger from Delhi, flew down to Bangalore. And this was, by then it was about 7 or 8 days after the event. And then they started then on elephant back, found out that the tiger had crossed the main road, had gone to the other side, to the backwater side, and was hiding amongst some boulders. And in spite of not having fed for so many days, he was still strong enough to charge at the elephants and sending them into a frenzy. So anyway, to again cut a long story short, he was tranquilized and taken to Mysore Zoo. He was operated upon. By that time, gangrene had set in, so he had to be amputated. That became infected, so there was another amputation higher up. That got infected. A third amputation was done. And of course, there was no question of releasing him back into the wild. Probably if they had acted on the very first day when I complained, maybe the leg could have been saved. But this is all just probability and possibilities and so on. But he was then sent to Bannerghatta, and there he sired, I think, 2 or 3 litters of cubs in Bannerghatta, and then passed away some years ago. That was the story.
So that was a male tiger, right?
That was a male tiger. He was called Masti after that because he's found in that area.
Okay. Was it scary? The entire episode?
It wasn't scary. It was really sad. I felt extremely sad that we had not been taken seriously enough. Because this was the very first time that a jaw trap had been set, or at least a report of a jaw trap in southern India, let alone Karnataka, apparently. So nobody believed that there were jaw traps lying around and animals being caught in jaw traps. So that was difficult for them to know, the forest department, to believe that actually there was this tiger that was caught in a jaw trap. So that took a long time. And then when I found that nobody was listening, I got frustrated, went to Star News, and then it was broadcast all over India. Repeatedly, every half an hour, the news was showing this again and again and again, the videos.
Okay. So we got one information about you. When you were a kid, you used to take some live animals to your school. So is that...
No, I had one pet squirrel, and he used to visit in my pocket. And each time I started walking, he would curl up and sleep inside. And when I stopped, he would come out with just his head and 2 front paws outside. And I would feed him a raisin or something like that, and then he would go back to sleep again. I had named him Perry. Perry Mason was my favorite character at that time. I used to read lots of these Perry Mason stories, so I called him Perry.
Perry.
Yeah,
okay. So you used to take him to the school?
Not really. I was not like Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was
okay. I really got acquainted with you just few days ago, and you joined YPS just a month ago, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
But my introduction to you was through two pictures that keep appearing on the Salon website of YPS. That is the giant among dwarfs
Oh yes.
and the Gentoo penguin diving.
Yeah. That you'll see that today in the talk today.
Uh, okay. So that was my question. So will we get to see that picture as well? The Gentoo.
Yeah, get to Bengaluru.
Okay. Okay, sir. There's one more thing that I forgot to mention to our viewers. Our viewers have to be very cautious now. Dr. Ajit is also a hypnotist and an amateur magician. So he has performed many shows in Bangalore and Mysore. So now he is here to hypnotize you all with his amazing pictures. So over to you, sir. Let us take a trip to Antarctica.
Thank you.
I
Thank you
hope
so much.
everyone.
And
Yeah, I hope everyone has got their winter wear and hot cup of coffee or beverage. It's going to be very cold.
thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
And
oh,
thank you.
thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, President, and so many others in YPS who made this possible. This is really, a great honor for me to be addressing such an elite and such a knowledgeable audience, like the Youth Photographic Society, and of course all the others around the globe nowadays. It's something that can be seen anywhere on Earth. So this is a huge honor. Thank you so much. I have known Satish since 1991 or 92. He may not remember. But those days, there used to be a monthly meeting in Mr. Hanumantrao's house. And Satish was there. There was Mr. Perumal. There was Gulbajani. Then there was Alama Prabhu. And so many others would come. And then there was a strike project in Mr. Hanumantrao's house. And then I was a mute spectator to all these things that were happening at that time. At that time itself, Satish was a giant among the photographers. So, it's great to be in the same group as he is. Right. Okay. Now, all I want you to do is sit back, relax, and join me on this fantastic journey that I took in November of 2013. Now, I've named this The Last Frontier. Why is it called Last Frontier? Why did I name it The Last Frontier? Now, I took this from Steve Waugh's cricket team in 2001. Steve Waugh with his, all-conquering Australian team. They had beaten teams in their own country and also in England, in South Africa, in the West Indies, apart from defeating them in Australia. The only thing that he had not done was come to India and defeat India in India. So he apparently said that this was the last frontier. He had to cross that. Of course, he denies having said that, but it's become part of cricket lore now. Anyway, so I named this The Last Frontier because I had made a wish list after around 2006, 2007, as to what countries I should visit for their exotic wildlife. And the Antarctic was right on top. Then came the Arctic and Galapagos and the grizzly bears in Kenya, Tanzania, Botswana, South Africa, and so on. But the Antarctic was on top for several reasons. One, the remoteness of the place. Secondly, the cost that was involved in it. Thirdly, I had to leave my work. I'm a private surgeon, so if I go away from work, I don't get paid. So going away from work for a month to this place, and it was probably the most difficult of any of the journeys that one can undertake as a photographer. It is cold, it is wet, it is slippery, it is very icy, and fog rolls in, the cold and blustery winds, so many things, and of course the choppy sea. The Drake Passage and so on, and sailing in a ship, in a small vessel like that is not easy. You get thrown around. It's not like your luxury cruise that you have, where you hardly feel that you're on sea, at sea. This is getting thrown around this way and that and so on. So it's very, very difficult. So for a number of reasons, I said, let me get rid of this first. All the others will be relatively a walk in the park. So that's why I chose Antarctica first. And I'm glad I did. And whenever I give this talk, though, not just to photographers, but to others, two questions are usually asked. One, they ask, why did you go in November when it is so cold? Then I have to remind them, this is the southern hemisphere. November, December, Jan, and February are the summer months. Now, when you say summer months, it's not that it's hot. I'm talking about The maximum temperature of being around, say, 0 degrees and minimum of -7 or -5. This is in summer. And of course, it will still be snowing. In fact, on the last day, on our return, on November 30th, it was snowing in this place. That was the last day. So that is the height of summer. So when I say summer, it's not really, summer as we know it. Right? That is one. The second question I'm asked is, how many polar bears did you see? Fortunately, there are no polar bears in the southern hemisphere. If there had been polar bears there would be no penguins, because these birds unfortunately can't fly. There are lots of other creatures also, other birds also that can't fly. So they would have been decimated if polar bears had been there. So God has been kind enough to put polar bears on the North Pole and all these penguins and other flightless birds in the southern hemisphere. So no polar bears at all. So those two questions out of the way. Just join me, like I said, and then let's proceed. Now, this is me at the Bangalore airport as it was then. Now, don't pay attention to that lady, please. She did not accompany me. And I had given my camera to my driver to take a photograph. He should have waited maybe a couple of seconds for that lady to pass. But anyway, now I have to live with it. This is the only image I have of me leaving the airport. The reason I'm showing this is of a number of things. One is the suitcase in which all my clothes, including the warm clothing and the boots and all that were. The bag on top contained lots of other equipment like chargers and so on. The camera bag at the back contained my cameras and lenses, and my laptop bag contained, of course, the laptop and hard disk and so on. So that is what I was carrying with me to the Antarctic. We went from Bangalore to Dubai. I stayed overnight in Dubai and took the very, very early morning flight, almost 16 hours, from Dubai all the way via Rio de Janeiro in Brazil to Buenos Aires in Argentina. And there I stayed in this very, very quaint little hotel, very small, very, very clean, lovely place. And that's me sitting there in this lovely place. And here is a rare photograph of me holding an orange juice in my hand. All my friends make fun of me, saying, when did you ever start drinking orange juice? Whatever be the time of day. So there's another image that I can't, live on. This is very, very embarrassing to show this photograph, but just because the place, this is what it was. And the next day, I flew another 4.5 hours from Buenos Aires all the way down to Ushuaia, which is the southernmost tip and southernmost city on earth. That is Ushuaia. It is a small little town of about 50,000 people, population, surrounded on three sides by snow-covered mountains, and on one side, of course, by the southern sea, the Drake Passage, which separates it from the Antarctic mainland. That is supposed to be the most choppy sea in the world, the Drake Passage. Now, that is Ushuaia in summer. You can see all these snow-clad mountains on three sides and this strip of sea which separates Ushuaia from Antarctica mainland. I met up with some people who are going to be my friends for the rest of the tour. And except for me and another guy from Hong Kong, all the others, we were the only two Asians. All the others, there were about 75 people went, 75, 76 people. We were all photographers, and they were all from Canada, the US, Europe, UK, and so on. But only two from Asia. And went to the hotel, and there's this man, I'm sure a number of you will recognize him, John Shaw, on the right-hand side, one of the giants of photography. And anyone would give an arm and a leg to spend even just 1 hour with him. And here I was spending an entire month with this great man. Wonderful human being. You could approach him anytime. He was always willing to teach, and it was a great experience being with him. On the left is this giant polar bear of a man, Joseph Van Os, and he was the director. He was the person who took everybody around on these tours. This was the ship, the MV Ushuaia, that's what it was called. Just about 240 feet in length, no icebreaker, no stabilizer, so it was going to be thrown around in these rough seas. It was apparently a spy ship built in the 1960s in the US to spy on Cuba and all the others, And this is now retrofitted, and it's been, there are lots of cabins in there. and it can hold about 90 to 100 people, including the crew. So it's very, very small. It's not a very large ship. And this was going to be our home for the next almost a month. This was my room, just bunk beds. And since I was the younger of the two, I had to sleep on top. And the other guy, who was, I think, a couple of years older than me, had to sleep on the bottom bunk. It was hardly about 6 feet by 8 feet, very, very small. There was no place for any for your suitcase. So you brought the suitcase in, took all the clothes out that you needed, suitcase were taken away, and they were given to you only on the very last day when you could then get your suitcase back. So until then, you had no suitcase, just a few clothes, your boots, and so on. Wash basin, as you can see, just next to the bed. A very, very tiny table on which you could download your images. And next to that was a small toilet. That toilet was a common toilet between our room and another room on the other side. So when you went to the toilet, you had to remember to, bolt the toilet, the other toilet, apart from, of course, your own side, and then do whatever you had to do. And then remember to unlock their door. Otherwise, they can't come in, you see, and you can get shouted at. So unlock their door and then come back in here again. And also have to remember that because the ship could be thrown around and you were going this way and that way and swaying and so on, it was advisable for males not to stand and pee because you'll be spraying it everywhere. So it was better to sit down on the commode like a lady and then pee and and then get up. So you couldn't stand because most of the time you were swaying about like a real drunk. And then we were all led onto the deck, given our life jackets, and that was with us throughout the tour. We had to remember to wear it before getting off the ship and bring it back with us. And this was our own life jacket for that duration of that tour. We were given directions on what to do if the ship hit an iceberg, if it capsized, where the lifeboats were, where our lifeboats were. There were about 6 lifeboats. So each group had been given one lifeboat. There were some rations on the lifeboat, which would probably last a few days, like biscuits and things like that and so on. But rather scary, actually, when you're told all these things before setting out. This was the main deck area where everybody would assemble and sit and either download or just sit and talk and have a cup of coffee or tea. The far right corner was where the coffee and tea used to be. And that doubled up as a bar in the evenings. And you'll notice that everything, all the furniture and the railings, everything were battened down to the ground. They were fixed to the ground because of the movement of the ship. If it is not fixed, it could kill someone by the sheer movement. So they were all fixed to the floor. There was no way you could move any so far around. You will also notice that there are some white strips along these sidebars, white strips of paper. They are what are called barf bags. And number of people, I think almost 90% of people were throwing up for the first few days. For the first 2 or 3 days, most people did not even appear outside their rooms because it was that violent. Fortunately for me, I had taken Dramamine. I had lots of nausea for a few days, but didn't throw up. But these bath bags, because you had no time to run to the toilet, so you could just pull this strip off, throw up in that, tie it, and run to the toilet, and then dispose of it. So that was what the bath bags were for. And you were always told to hold on to the railings when you walk because of the severe movement side to side and front and back. In fact, as you were climbing up the deck or going down the stairs, you were always told to hold the railings on both sides and have the camera strapped around your neck, or at least be, hold on firmly with one hand. Because suddenly, as you're going, let's say, up the steps, the ship suddenly goes up like this, and then you are walking vertically up. Next moment, the ship goes down, and you are left running down the steps. So it's rather dangerous. And there were stories about how on a previous trip, one person had died midway through the trip, and there was no way they could turn back. So the body was kept on ice, and at the end of the tour, the body was handed over to the relatives. There was also another story about on the previous trip, a person had fallen down and fractured a leg. But that was fortunately in the beginning of the tour itself, near the Falkland Islands. So the person was, taken off and lifted by helicopter to Ushuaia and then somewhere else for treatment. So it was not going to be an easy journey. That's why I kept saying that this is one trip that I wanted to get rid of first. before I could before I became too old and couldn't do all these things that I was able to do on this particular tour. Now, this was our trip. We started from Ushuaia, went northwest to what are called the Falklands, then traveled all the way down southeast to South Georgia. Falklands and South Georgia are UK territory. And the UK went to war against Argentina because Argentina thought that they were their islands and they claimed them as their islands. So the UK went to war against them somewhere in the 1980s or so, like that. And because UK retained those two territories. They are still UK territories. And then we sailed from South Georgia to the tip of that's the Antarctic Peninsula. That is mainland Antarctica, and that's all the part of the mainland that we were going to be on. Then back again through the Great Passage back to Ushuaia. There's a key on the right-hand side showing what we did when and so on. Now, the Falklands, there are more than I think 600 or 700 islands that make up the Falklands, but mainly there is the West Falklands and the East Falklands. And again, there's so much wildlife here and bird life here. It's really worth spending 7 to 10 days at least only in the Falklands. It is that rich in bird life and animal life. We just went to 2 or 3 places. Carcass Island that you can see right on top left, and Saunders Island also, which you can see on somewhere on the top left next to Carcass Island. So we visited just a couple of places before sailing on. Then we traveled to South Georgia. This is a bad picture that I took off the net. It is shaped like a sausage, and running along the dorsal part, that is right in the middle, throughout the length of this island, are mountains. It's called the Allardyce range of mountains, and they look like the vertebrae of a huge buried dinosaur. Dividing the island into this is much better. That is the Allardyce range, separating South Georgia, the east coast from the west coast, or the north coast and south coast. The east coast is relatively warm. That's where lots of animals and birds are, and we go to the east coast. And on the west coast, it's extremely cold. Hardly any animals and birds are there. It's also very, very rough. So no landings are made on the west coast, only on the east coast. You notice these numbers up there. 7 is in one place, 8 is far away, then 9 and 10, and then back again 14, 15, up and down. Now the reason for this is the way we did the tour. It wasn't one part, then move along to the next one, to 8, and then to 9 and 10, and so on. The reason for that was when we were sailing, the captain would say, fine, okay, we're going to try and then land here, but then the weather would suddenly turn very, very rough. It would start raining, or the sea was very choppy. There was no way we could make a landing. So the captain said, okay, now we better move on. So we moved again a few kilometers, and suddenly as you went around the bend, the weather was absolutely fine, the sun was shining, or at least the sea was calm. We were able to make a landing. So we did one, and then we went along until we found another place where the sea was calm and landed there, and then we came back and went forward. And this is what we did throughout on the East Coast for a number of days that we were there on South Georgia. Please notice 2 names that are there. One is Grytviken, which is just underneath 10, to the left of 11. And there's also to the left and below 8, there's a place called Stromness. Stromness and Grytviken, we will come back to this a little later, but these are 2 names that I would request you to remember, Grytviken and Stromness. These were whaling harbors at that time, and I'll come back to that later. That is the Antarctic Peninsula. Now, this Antarctica compared to the Arctic, Antarctica is almost like a continent. It is solid land. Because it is solid land, a number of countries have established research centers, and you can see the Indian Research Center right up there on top, next to the Russian one. And but in the Arctic, it is mainly frozen sea ice, and therefore you can't establish a center there, because when the ice melts, your research center will sink. So this is rock, absolutely hard underneath, and on top of that are miles of snow and ice and so on, all piled up. So Antarctica is a solid, it's a continent. The Arctic inside, it's mainly frozen sea ice. So that's the main difference between these two. And that tip there, the Antarctic Peninsula, is very, very close to Ushuaia. Another way of doing The Antarctic is to sail from New Zealand or from Australia, but that apparently takes 5 days to just reach the place. And mainly emperor penguins out there. So that's another way of going to the Antarctic mainland. This Antarctic Peninsula we did in fairly clean order, in regular order, as 20, 21, 22, all next to each other. And these are the names of the places that we visited and dropped off, went ashore. Now, before going off the boat or the ship, we had to go through this drill. We had to, of course, wear our inner clothing. That is, you have your inner jacket, you have your underwear, you have warm clothing on top, warm pants, pants again on top of that, shirt on top of that, then your warm clothing, which is also a little waterproof, then your life jacket, and then your camera bag and tripod and so on. All these things you have to take ashore and then bring them back again. You had to walk through 2 or 3 of these plates which contain antiseptic solution, so that you don't take germs onto the land and then you come back and do the same thing before coming back into the ship. So this is the drill. And then you have to walk down these steps into the Zodiac. The Zodiac is it's a rubber dinghy with an outboard motor. It can hold about 8 to 10 people. And it looks very easy when the sea is calm, but suddenly sometimes the sea becomes choppy and you think that the Zodiac is just about 2 feet away, and then suddenly the Zodiac slips away, and then you find that you're about 4 feet away from the Zodiac, and you can't jump. So you have to hold on and be very, very careful. I remember one person lost his tripod; it sunk there. It's lying at the bottom of the sea somewhere in South Georgia. So we have to be careful while getting down and taking our equipment onto that, and then sitting in order. Then this is the Zodiac leaving MV Ushuaia. Then we come ashore. We are all asked to get off, and then the Zodiac returns to pick up another group of people. Then we are all assembled here and then told what to do and what not to do. We were told not to approach penguins to less than 3 or 4 feet. We had to stay far away from them. Of course, nobody told the penguins that. So they would come very, very close sometimes, and very, very curious fellows at that. They would come, shuffle along, look inside the lens, look at your feet, sniff your feet, and then walk away. Extremely curious and totally unafraid of human beings. They've not been exposed to that for a long, long time. So totally unafraid. And it's absolutely wonderful. But we were told to stay away. We were not allowed to go or approach any animal or bird to less than 3 feet. And we were given instructions. And it's not that as soon as you get off, you're going to find animals and birds everywhere. There's a long trek. So carrying all that and your backpack and the tripod, we had to walk and walk and walk. We had to walk all the way up this hillock onto the other side, and then some more to be able to see where the birds and animals are. Okay, so it's not easy at all. Even this trek is not easy, even though there's no snow here. It's very windy, it's very cold, and you'll notice there are no trees. Absolutely barren land, only tough grass, like it's called tussock grass, only that can grow here and nothing else. And apparently it is so low in nutrition that normally a good acreage, 1 acre will support about 12 to 14 or 15 sheep. But in this place, 1 acre can support only 2 sheep. That's how poor the nutrition is in this type of grass. So we go down on the other side of the slope. There we are. And on the far cliff, far away, you can see certain birds all making their, they have their nest there and they're nesting there. So that's where we had to go if we had to take any photographs of birds. As I said, several ways of taking photographs. One is using the tripod, or you could lie down, or you could take it from a boat, but this is from using a tripod. And as I said again, these penguins are very, very curious, and they come looking at you, wondering what you are and so on. This looks very similar to to a guard of honor. When any visiting dignitary or president or king comes to our country, or we go there are people lined up, and then there's a guard of honor, and the person walks past. That's what this penguin is doing. This is a king penguin. The other one is king penguin as well. Or you could shoot from the top of the deck of the ship. But you'll notice it's very, very slippery, and there are no real railings that one can hold on to. And if you slip and fall into these icy waters, you will not even last 30 seconds, believe me. It's a shock that will kill, and no way a person can be saved. In 30 seconds, he'll be out if he falls into these waters. And you can see again, it's a very, very narrow strait through which the captain has to maneuver the ship, and it's not that easy at all. So standing on the deck and with the camera in hand, with the ship going left and right and forward and back, with birds flying around, if you wanted to photograph flying birds, you had to be very, very steady and then try and hope that you can get the bird in sharp focus. So one of them was this sheath bill. Of course, you had to overexpose here to get this white bird against the dull white sky. A sheath bill is like pigeons. They're all over the place, and they're scavengers like crows are here in our country. Very, very important in their environment ecology. This is a petrel, also called the Pintado petrel, 5 feet wingspan. That's the dorsal surface. The previous one was the ventral surface. The kelp gull, large gull.
Ajit sir, can you move your mouse to the corner, please? The mouse cursor is right in the middle.
Yeah, this one?
There is a mouse cursor in the middle of the image.
Oh.
You can just swipe somewhere in the corner
Is
on
that
the
fine?
macro.
Is that fine?
Yes, it has gone.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You can proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Right, I can't see that. Okay, fine. So you could also lie down and take, and this is very, very good because these birds are very small, very tiny, 2 feet or 3 feet in height, that's all. So it's better to get down, even though it's extremely cold, as you can see, lie down in the snow and then take photographs. So 3 ways of taking: use a tripod, or from the deck, standing, or lying down like this. Also be very careful as to what is going on around you, because there could be something very interesting going on just behind you. And there's this penguin doing what is called tobogganing. Tobogganing is where, when there is a slope, the penguin, instead of walking, which is very difficult for it to do because it keeps waddling this way and that, if it finds a slope, it will lie down on its belly and then go just sliding down. That is tobogganing. That's the way of locomotion on land, which is better for them than walking. Obviously, in water, they are absolutely fantastic. And penguins don't nest on the snow. They nest on hard, rocky areas. So it's not easy to find penguins. You shouldn't think that there are penguins all over the place. You have to trek for vast distances, as you can see here, and the penguins are in that far right corner there, which is where those penguins are nesting. And at the end of the day, all waiting to get back to the ship. Now, on Falklands, if you wanted to pee, you were well allowed to. On South Georgia, it was sort of frowned upon. They didn't really encourage you to pee on the island. But on the Antarctic mainland, absolutely no. If you had to use the toilet, you signal for the Zodiac to come, get into the Zodiac, go back to the ship, do whatever you want, and come back again. So you can't use that as an open toilet anywhere on the Antarctic mainland, and also not really on South Georgia. These were part of our crew. This is Joseph Van Os, the tour leader, and all the others. That is John Shaw to the left with the blue coat, and next to him to his left is Wayne Lynch. Then there is Joseph Van Os himself. Chris Edward with the white hair. Absolutely genius about geology. So he would tell you about how many millions or billions of years old these rocks were and so on. Then next to him in dark glasses at the back is Jeff Venuga, a landscape specialist from the US. The lady in red is Monica, and she was German residing in Argentina. And she was the one who would crack the whip if we went too close to animals. Next to her, Anna, done a lot of research work on seals and sea lions and so on. Real genius with these creatures. And then the next two are husband and wife pair, Mary Ann McDonald and Ian McDonald. And these two lead their own separate tours as well. They live in Pennsylvania, USA. As I said, the Falklands, absolutely barren, no trees. All the birds have to nest on the ground. And they're exposing themselves to a lot of danger that way. So they have to nest on the ground, no trees at all, tussock grass, and that's the way it is. And as I said, you cross over that hillock, come down. Just 1 second, 1 minute video to show how dusty these conditions were. Two albatrosses sitting there on the rock. male and female with their chicks. The upland goose male is the white one, the female is the dull colored one. Photographers all trying to shoot albatrosses in flight. Black-browed albatross, far away, blue-eyed cormorants or blue-eyed shags. As you can see, it's raining. Penguins are nesting on rocky areas. The sea far away. Very, very cold and wet. The upland goose male. This is Magellanic penguin, the only penguin that lives in burrows. It nests in burrows in the ground, natural burrows. The only one that does that, all the others nest on land. Gentoo penguin with eggs. And one of the reasons we are told not to approach these birds is because of this. Your pants will become white in color in next to no time as it's pooping. So there's a circle of white around each of these nesting areas. The bird on the right is the striated caracara, a bird of prey, waiting for one or two penguins to leave their nest and then catch hold of either the chick or take away with an egg or so. Gentoo penguins mating. I'll just run through a lot of images now without spending too much time. If you want me to pause, you tell me when to pause and I'll do that. Upland goose male, a different subspecies, different variety where it's got lots of stripes. Upland goose female, female again. Ashy-headed goose, upland goose female. And because it was summer, lots of lovely flowers around. The upland goose male. Buff-necked ibis. The striated caracara. This is a kelp goose male, and the kelp goose female. Whale bones more than a kilometer inland. That's how strong the winds and the surf can be to take a carcass all the way that far inland.
So most of the birds that you showed here, so they are like native bird species, or there are some bird species which migrate to the Antarctica.
Most of them are local to this particular area. They nest here and they live here. Some of the flying birds might go to nearby Argentina and so on. Otherwise, no. There are some. The Arctic tern can fly all the way from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again. So there are some that can fly all over. But all these, of course, they can't fly. And with most of these flightless birds, so they are all resident here and not found anywhere else. This is a rock hopper penguin, bright red eye. And they give these lovely poses as if to say, your friend went that way. Or no, he actually went this way. It's very, very nice. The antics are difficult to explain. Angry looking rock hopper penguin. And it's called rock hopper penguin because these things hop from rock to rock. They go down all the way to the sea, which is far away, fill up their bellies with fish, come back and hop again upwards. Hop, 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 all the way up back to their nests. American oyster catcher. The black-browed albatross. It's very, very beautiful bird, 9 feet wingspan, and it lends itself beautifully for black and white conversion as well. The black-browed albatross. Mating ritual or pre-mating ritual when their beaks go clack, 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 clack. the dorsal surface, and the ventral surface. Then we come to this mammal, the southern elephant seal. There is a northern elephant seal which is smaller along the California coast, but this one is absolutely massive. And the fact that it actually, hunts in the sea makes it a marine animal or marine mammal and not a land mammal. Because if it had been classified as a land mammal, this would have been the second largest mammal on Earth next to the elephant. There have been specimens which are 22 feet in length and weighing 4 tons. You're talking about 4,000 kilograms. Heavier than a hippo, heavier than a rhino. Like I said, they mainly hunt in the seas, so they're called marine mammals and not land mammals. Otherwise, as I said, they would have been that classified as the second largest. Huge characters. This is the male, and we were told never to get downwind of one of these guys because their bellies are full of fish which are decayed, and when he opens his mouth and goes like that, there's a blast of very, very foul-smelling breath. So, but you get caught unaware sometimes. And you're in the firing line. Look at this guy. He must be a very, very handsome guy for all the females. Another handsome fellow. The male with all the females, that's his harem. And this animal has got the largest or the greatest sexual dimorphism that is known. The males are much, much larger than the females by a huge margin. The females are not even 1,000 kilograms. The males are, as I said, 2,500 usually, 2.5 to 3 tons in weight. So this is the largest or the widest sexual dimorphism of any mammal with his girlfriend. Now that particular day, the wind speed was about 75 kilometers per hour, blowing down from the glacier. Extremely cold. All of us were huddled down on the ground. We couldn't stand. It was so powerful. We were all lying down, including all these seals. We were all huddled together. And it lasted a long while, so we could not even go back to the ship. The water was so choppy. Only the penguins were vertical, and they had all come back from fishing in the sea, so they had their bellies full. So they were all sort of waddling around like this, and they were the only creatures that were vertical. All the others were absolutely flat. Here I am, downwind of one of these blasts from southern elephant seal. The reason why they have all those scratch marks all over their bodies is because these males fight. Now they're called beach masters, and each male wants to look up his own territory so that no other male can come in there. But there are always other males trying to come in there and shove this male out and take hold of that harem. So there are always fights going on. One of those animals which has got a bony penis, the penis is called baculum. The walrus baculum is supposed to be the longest of all the bony penises, but this creature too, that is the southern elephant seal, has a bony penis. And these are the shapes of those bony penises. They look like, these, if you see all these ancient movies, mythological movies, all the Rakshasas will be using weapons like this. They look very much like that. And these are the bones in the penis, for example. This is another creature there, and this fellow is a nasty fellow. He is the Antarctic fur seal. And he's got, as I said, a very nasty temperament. You can't go close to them. They will attack you. They will run after you and bite you. And there'll be a very, very nasty bite which can get infected. So they have this large area of almost 25 feet radius around them, which they guard very, very zealously. There were only males at that time of the year. Females were yet to come. And we were told to walk around them as though they were all landmines. So if you had to go far away and then look at all the penguins and all that, you had to go past them being very, very careful not to disturb them. This is a Antarctic fur seal. You can see the external ear in the fur seal. Young one, probably a pup from the previous year. And even these pups, as I said, I've got a nasty DNA inside them. He's not even less than half the size of the adult and still trying to bite them. There. They look very, very cute, very innocent, but don't be fooled by those looks. They come with a nasty set of teeth as well. This particular day, it was mildly snowing. All those vertical things in the background are all penguins. And this is something that nobody is ever going to see again in this lifetime. These are, can anybody guess what these are? These are reindeer. Reindeer in the southern hemisphere, unheard of. They don't live in the southern hemisphere. They're all from the northern hemisphere. But they were brought by the sailors, or the sealers as they were called, those who hunted seals, and the whalers, to provide meat for them in the cold winter months. Now it was found that these guys were walking around and destroying all the nests because all the birds had to nest on the ground. So a decision was taken around 2012-13 when I was there that all of them had to be shot. By 2017, all the reindeer had been wiped out. They were all shot. There are no reindeer now to be found in South Georgia, which in a way is a good thing, but very sad for all those creatures that, innocent animals that had to be shot for no fault of their own. One of those seals, this seal hunts fish, not penguins. There is one seal that actually hunts penguins, and that is the leopard seal. But that we did not see, but this is the Weddell seal, doing some yoga exercises. We also saw lots of whales, humpback whales, the right whale, and the sperm whale, the killer whale, which is actually a mammal, all these mammals. And when the whale comes up to breathe, it breathes out and lets out this huge plume of spray of water. And that's how a person from far away can recognize that there are whales in the area. There's one photograph that I always wanted to take, water dripping down from the fluke, that is the tail of the whale. This is the wandering albatross, the largest wingspan of any bird, 11 feet from one wingtip to the other, 11 feet ventral surface. And when they come into land, though, they're extremely graceful in the air and in the water. But as they come into land, they're very, very clumsy. And they run about, they require a long runway, and they flop around and fall this way and that, and finally come to rest. This is a baby of a wandering albatross, and it was exercising its pectoral muscles to become strong enough so that it could take off. It still wasn't strong enough to fly. It was very, very windy that day, I remember, and I had to keep my camera on a tripod and still hold on tight and try and focus on that the bird's eye as the wind was blowing. You can get a sense of how strong the wind is. Another albatross that we saw was the light-mantled sooty albatross. This is the only picture I have. It didn't come down to land. Albatrosses actually fly around for almost 1 to 2 years. They don't come to land for almost 1 to 2 years. They come back only to breed. So all this time, they're either flying or landing in the sea and fishing there and then flying off again. So it's not easy to see them always on land. Now, some pictures of penguins, Gentoo penguin. So far we've seen the Magellanic penguin and the Gentoo penguin, right? And the rock hopper penguin, 3. Again, lends itself to black and white. Welcome to Antarctica, it says. And they have to travel vast distances. As I said, we can't go near the penguins, but they can come close to us. So I just wanted to show how close they come to human beings. Tobogganing. And of course, in water, they're absolutely magnificent. They nest on land, as I said, not on the snow. And they make a shallow little saucer-shaped depression, arranging stones around, pebbles around, and that's where they lay their eggs. But since pebbles are very difficult and very rare to come by, when one penguin goes away, another penguin will come quietly and then steal some rocks and stones and go away. And if it's caught, there's a big squabble and they fight like mad. Icebergs and penguins. Penguin drinking seawater. Normally it doesn't. It only eats snow. But this is where the fresh water was meeting clear. The iceberg had melted. This is actually pure water, not salt water. That's how far they have to travel. They go into the water, fish there, walk all the way up the slope onto the other side, and then go to their nest. This one has missed the boat. Very rare to find this. When it can find some grass, that's a luxury for its nest. And this one seems to be saying, water is not too deep, why did you come over? And guy sort of jumps in, feet first, and the other guy says, "No, that's not the way to jump in. I'll show you how." And this is the one that goes in the YPS.
YPS salon, yeah.
You can see the splash there. That's because there's a splash before this penguin hits. That's because the other penguin is already dived in. Otherwise, people will wonder, how is there a splash of water before this penguin hits the water? This is an Adelie penguin. Small fellow, about 2 feet in height, lovely white ring around the eye. Adelie penguin. Adelie. Eggs.
Is it the male penguin that takes care of the egg?
That is, when you're talking about the king penguin and so on, yes, when
Okay.
they lay their eggs, then the male takes care while the female goes away and then comes back, emperor penguins. So they do that. But here, both male and female take care because the water is not far away. And there are eggs out there. The white one is probably the fresher egg, the more recent egg, and laid probably just that very day. The darker one with mottled surface is probably an older egg. All of them hurrying back with bellies full of fish, fighting over a pebble that was stolen by another person, another penguin. Close up of a Adelie penguin. There they are collecting pebbles and throwing them down and arranging them to form a nest. You'll wonder how they got on top of the iceberg. Because it's a floating iceberg. They actually shoot out of the water like a rocket, right out of the water and then land on top. That's how they get on top. This is one of them doing that. Missed his footing and then fell back in again, looking very clumsy while doing that. But that's the way they get on top of the iceberg. Kelp gull. Now these are giant petrels. This is the northern giant petrel. This is the southern giant petrel. The northern giant petrel has a slightly reddish brown beak tip, whereas the southern has a greenish beak tip. These are all tube-nosed birds. As you can see, there's sort of a tube on top of the upper bill. All these petrels have that peculiar feature. Another, mainly a scavenger, but also can be a bird of prey, called the skua. S-K-U-A, skua. S-K-U-A. Blue-eyed shag or blue-eyed cormorants mating. This is another penguin called the macaroni penguin. Now, this particular place, the water was so choppy that we couldn't make a landing. The tour leader, Joseph Van Os, tried to make a landing. He landed on the shore, broke a few ribs, and for the rest of the tour, poor fellow couldn't laugh or sneeze or cough because it is very, very painful. And another person, I think, dropped a lens into the water there. That's the end of that lens. Macaroni penguin. This is a chin strap penguin. You can see why it's called a chin strap penguin. It looks like it's got like a hat strap, like these bobbies used to wear in England. The policemen, see, like this. It's a chin strap. Very cute looking, and it gives them a very nice smiley face. Almost like a clown. Eating snow, this is what I said, they eat snow. And we come to the king penguins, large colony. This was in Andrew Bay, and there were 200,000 pairs of these with their chicks. Those are the brown ones are all the chicks. Then they molt and then become king penguins, adult king penguins. The whole place is stinking. It is wet. It's full of the droppings, bird droppings, but you have to lie down in all of that and try and take photographs if you want to take some good images. And these guys have a very peculiar feature. They just keep walking around, then they'll stop, throw their head back and go, and then keep walking again. Two guys meeting up. Again, I don't know what they do. They stand looking at each other. Then one throws his head back and squawks. Another one throws his head back and squawks. And then they'll go their different ways. Go off, walk away.
There was a animated movie called Happy Feet.
Yes, yes,
So
yes. I know my grandchild
it,
watches that.
uh, it reminded me of that movie. Looking at the photos.
Some days were these were very, very few and far between. Lovely, clear day. King penguin feeding the chick. Now, this one reminded me of the one old Wild West, where the chap on the right is the referee, he's the marshal or the sheriff of that place, and the other two guys have a difference, and they walk with, with their guns in the hand, they walk 10 paces and turn around and then try and shoot each other. This is so much like that. I just wanted to convey that cold, misty feeling that was there in that particular day. This is molting and becoming an adult. The chick. This is light rain falling that day. You can see all these fine droplets and the lovely colors on the neck of this bird. King penguin. Neck feathers. And this particular place, southern elephant seals, penguins. Okay, now I come to another phase where I'm going to show you mainly icebergs and the landscapes. We went around looking for icebergs on two occasions, on two or three occasions. Now, this particular area, all those black dots are all penguins. And there's no way we can make a landing here and climb up that slope. Just to show you that there are some places which are totally inaccessible to human beings. A glacier coming down to meet the sea. And this is one where a glacier, an iceberg came and hit our ship. There was a huge sound, and we knew that we had hit something. Then the captain had to quickly take the ship away from there. Again, showing you that this is a rocky area. This is absolute, it's solid landmass, Antarctica. There's our ship. This was taken from the Zodiac, obviously. Narrow straits through which the captain has to maneuver the ship. So it's not very easy. The life for a captain is not easy at all. A natural archway that is formed there. The natural arch that I showed earlier. Very few days were clear like this. And on those days on the ship, we would have a barbecue on the deck. Now these are not icebergs, but these are what are called pack ice, P-A-C-K, pack ice. This is frozen seawater, and they are very, very dangerous. They are called pack ice because they almost hunt like a pack of wolves. If a ship gets caught inside and the pack ice surrounds that, there's no way a ship which doesn't have an icebreaker, there's no way that that ship can escape from there. So it's called pack ice and rather dangerous. These are just floating, frozen seawater. This is not fresh water. One of those, again, rare, lovely days. There's a glacier meeting the sea. The ship again. And here you can do something slightly different. You can convert part of it to retain the color, part of it to black and white. So it looks sometimes it looks much better than the original. Black and white sometimes gives a very sinister look rather than a peaceful look like this. Lots of penguins on all those rocky areas. Icebergs floating. Again, evidence to show that there is lots of rock out there. Very choppy seas. Some of these are Arctic terns, ones that are flying around out there. Looking very, very lonely and lost. And that guy, Chris Edwards, who was there with us, was able to say how many millions of years old this rock was compared to the rock on the other side and so on. Ship in between in pack ice and small icebergs. icicles. Now these guys are on the ship. They're not on the snow. The ship is on the other side of this. There's this glacier breaking off. When the glacier actually is frozen river, right? So the river keeps moving. That whole ice mass keeps moving and moving and moving, and finally it's not able to bear the weight of this overhang, and the whole thing just collapses into the sea and then becomes an iceberg and starts floating. All the black dots, tiny black dots, are penguins out there. Now this sort of iceberg is easier to get close to. These are what are called tabular icebergs. They have straight edges, unlike the other icebergs, which are, just like a cone, small portion, 1/10 above the water, and the rest of it is below the water. You can't go close to them because you'll hit the iceberg and then you'll sink. But these are tabular icebergs, and you can go close to them. And they have some wonderful designs on them, all natural, made by the wind and the sea. With natural caves. This one looks like a fortress, a tabular iceberg, massive one actually. This was. Lovely shapes and colors. A huge tabular iceberg shooting through the water. This one had some fantastic designs on it. And as we went closer, you could see it in greater detail, as though there was some water flowing down. It had this lovely pattern. And this one looked like a golf ball in appearance. Look at this. Lovely designs. All natural.
The textures are amazing.
And I requested whether I could break off a small portion of an iceberg and take it back to the ship. And he said, yeah, of course you can, but what are you going to do with it? I said, no, I just want it. He said, okay. So I took a small piece, big chunk, really, took it back to the ship, left it on the deck. And it stayed there for about 2 or 3 days. It didn't melt. And I would break off a small portion and add it to my glass and add the single malt that I had. And so, when you think of it, these icebergs are parts of this glacier that flowed down. It took maybe 2,000 or 3,000 years to come from the top all the way down to the sea. So the air bubbles that were trapped inside are actually 2,000 to 3,000 years old. And when it hit the whiskey, all this air came out. So I was breathing the air that Buddha had breathed, or Jesus Christ had breathed. And it was worth. It was the whole trip. Just this was worth it. Actually, absolutely amazing. To take in all that, you become very philosophical, very, very emotional when you do something like this, and think about what you're actually breathing in. Okay, now if Hitler wanted to get an idea on how to conduct his camp where he slaughtered millions of Jews and gypsies and others, he could have probably got the idea from Grytviken. I called it, this is my title, the original Auschwitz. Auschwitz is where these camps and so many other camps that Hitler had, where these guys were slaughtered. The reason for these whaling harbors, as they were, Grytviken is one of the names that I asked you to remember in the beginning of the talk. This was the original Auschwitz. The reason for whaling and sealing was SEAL, I'm talking sealing, was the great industrial revolution began in Britain in 1760 and spread to Europe and America. For the first time, machine manufactured goods were available. Until then, only man-made. And even a table or a chair made by one person was slightly different from the similar table and chair made by another person. Like there were some differences, obviously. Now machines could make the same thing over and over again at a much faster rate and have the same consistency and so on, and in large volumes. So the market actually exploded because of the Industrial Revolution. But for the Industrial Revolution, you needed steam. And steam came not from wood, but from coal. So the coal industry thrived. And that was then able to, with that, they were able to make steam. and the steam drove the engines, and these were then could make all these various objects that man wanted. But to lubricate these moving parts, you needed some grease. At that time, subterranean oil had not been discovered, or was much too dangerous and much too costly to even explore. So the grease actually came from blubber, from the seals and from the whales. And because of this, almost all the seals and whales in the northern hemisphere were slaughtered. And they were wondering where to go next. At this time, there was a lot of interest in going further and further south and discovering new lands. And one of these, Captain Cook, came back with lots of stories about how so many whales were found in the southern hemisphere. There were hundreds and thousands of whales and seals. So this caught the interest of all these guys. They started going south in their hundreds, and then started killing whales and seals in the southern hemisphere as well. So that's what it is. So the whalers and sealers now sailed to the southern oceans, and also at the same time, the race to the South Pole had begun. Persons wanted to be the first to reach the South Pole. Who was it going to be? So Grytviken was the first whaling station in 1904 and the last to shut shop in 1966. And that's where Grytviken is. And the nice thing about Grytviken, at least for the whalers, was it was a harbor within a harbor. So it was well protected from the rough, choppy seas and the winds. So they liked that the most, and Grytviken was therefore the chosen one. Others being Stromness and all the others, the names that you can see out there. But Grytviken was the jewel amongst, so-called jewel amongst the whaling areas. Now, whaling is not an easy job. The captains at the time, ship captains, did not want to have burning coal on their wooden ships. They considered that dangerous and that the ship would catch fire. So it was only sailing, only using the wind power. And there was this central mast in the middle of that ship. And there was a small little drum sort of a thing on top. It's called the crow's nest. Crow's nest. And a person had to sit on top. And just imagine, on the deck itself, you're moving around this way and that. On top, how much more the fellow was kept moving. But from there, he could sight and see where the whale was. And he would say, whale there. Then, there she blows. And the ship would direct that ship toward the captain would direct the ship towards that area. And they would go and then kill the whale. Now, they had to harpoon that with their hands through the harpoon into the whale as it came up. And then keep following it. As it came up for breath again, next time, throw another one. Finally, it was killed, and they would quickly have to drag that carcass back. If they don't drag the carcass back quickly, the whale would blow. You can actually see some of these. If you go to YouTube and enter whales blowing up, you can actually see a whale blowing up because of the gases inside, and that has sunk many ships in the Antarctic. So they had to quickly get that whale back to shore. So whaling wasn't an easy job. Later on, of course, then the steam came in and the ships became much bigger, and the harpoons, they had an explosive head in them. So there were cannons, and the cannon would fire that. It would go into the whale and then explode inside the belly of the whale and then kill it instantly. Obviously, lots of accidents would happen. The chap who was filling the gunpowder into the explosive head could have his hand blown off or his head blown off. And accident like that meant 100% death. There was no hospital, and gangrene would set in very, very quickly, and that was the end of that guy. These are from the internet, and that's a whale that has been harpooned. Another whale harpooned. Now, much larger boats then came in, ships came in, and 4 or 5 carcasses now being dragged at the same time. One of those guys who had to load these explosives into those harpoon heads. And they brought the whale back to shore, and it was like a banana. They had to split that and then strip the skin back and get at the blubber. And this guy is trying to do a very dangerous job, trying to skin that on the ship itself. And while the ship is, moving sideways and forwards and backwards, and very slippery blubber that he's standing on. If he slips and falls and fractures his leg, that's the end of him. And no wonder the whole place is riddled with all these graves. And I went and saw some of these tombs. 20-year-old, 22-year-old, 25-year-old, small children actually, literally compared to us, who had gone out there trying to earn some quick money and then come back, but losing their lives and being buried out there. On a good day, 30 whales were slaughtered. That is called a good day. A total of 53,000 plus whales were killed, and 455,000 tons of whale oil extracted, 192,000 tons of whale meat sold. That is in Grytviken alone. There were so many other whaling harbors all along in South Georgia. But this, in Grytviken alone, this is what was done. And every part of the whale was useful. They would make the cops, the sticks, batons that the cops beat people with. They would make corsets for women. And these were advertised as true, real, authentic whale bone corsets, where the woman wanted to look very, very slim, and these corsets were tied around their waist, and they had to hold their breath, and then it was tightened. If you see Gone with the Wind, you'll see this, how it is being tied on to the actress there in that movie. So, but it couldn't last long. Whales were being slaughtered. There were hardly any more whales to be slaughtered. Almost all the seals had gone. And by then, fortunately for all these animals, the subterranean oil was discovered. It was easy to bring up. It was far cheaper. It was far less dangerous than whaling. So whaling died a natural death. Thank God for that. And now all these ships that were used, now these are my photographs. All the ships that were used then now lying derelict and just abandoned. That is the crow's nest right on top of that central mast. That small, that barrel sort of a thing. That's where the chap would sit and look out for whales. Crow's nest. Now all these have become part of a museum. The huge anchors, the cannons and their the harpoons, explosive heads. And of course, to wash away your sins, you need some form of place where you can go and wash your sins away. This is one of those. All those boilers where they would boil all this blubber and extract the oil. Heavy chains needed to pull the whale carcasses up the ramp here onto the top where the skinning was done. And God alone knows what secrets lie behind those sealed doors. All these old machinery just abandoned and left to rot, to rust. And now the southern elephant seals have come back again into these areas. Some years ago, they would have been slaughtered. There's no question of any southern elephant seal coming to shore like this in a whaling harbor. And there is Shackleton's grave out there as well in South Georgia. And I'll just spend just a few minutes before I wind up my talk on Shackleton. That's me, standing next to Ernest Henry Shackleton's grave in South Georgia. There's again the team that led us there. And okay, now just a few minutes on Shackleton. Who was he? Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton, to give him his full name, Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, Order of the British Empire, Fellow of the Royal Geographic Society, also Fellow of the Royal Scottish Society, Scientific Society. But to his men, he was simply called the boss. He made 4 expeditions, great man himself, 4 expeditions to the Antarctica. And at that time, the race to the South Pole had begun to see who was going to be the first person to stick the flag of his nation on the South Pole. And he was also caught up in that, Shackleton. So was another person called Scott. And Scott and Shackleton went on the first expedition on a ship called the Discovery between 1901 and 1903. Scott and Shackleton both being, characters that couldn't get along. They never sailed together again. And Scott went his own way. He wanted to be the first to go to the South Pole. And Shackleton did his own thing. And he went on the second expedition called the Nimrod expedition in 1907 to 1909 and reached to within 180 kilometers of the South Pole, which was a record in January 1909. And because of that, he was knighted by King Edward VII. He came back and became Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton because of that. He came just to within 180 kilometers. They ran out of rations. There was no food left. And they were living on just one biscuit a day. And one of his trusted lieutenants was called Frank Wilde. And he writes, all the money that was ever minted would not have bought that biscuit. And the remembrance of that sacrifice will never leave me. He gave his daily ration of one biscuit. Shackleton gave it to Wilde and said, you eat it. You're looking much hungrier and weaker. You eat that. So Frank Wilde stayed with him on all the other expeditions after that as well. So then the race was still on. Only two were in the race: Robert Falcon Scott from England and Roald Amundsen from he was a Norwegian, Norway. This is the thing that they took, the path that they took. Uh, Scott on the left, he went from that area, from the Ross ice shelf, and Amundsen went, that is the red line indicating the route that Amundsen took to reach the South Pole. And Amundsen was the first to reach it, and he put the Norwegian flag there on December the 14th, 1911. Just less than 5 weeks later, Scott did not know that Amundsen had already reached there. He reached there on Jan 17th, 1912, and saw the Norwegian flag flying there. And he was absolutely devastated. He was shattered. That is Roald Amundsen at the South Pole. And Scott comes there with the four others, and like I said, absolutely shattered that he had been beaten to it by Amundsen. And in his diary, he notes, the worst has happened. All the daydreams must go. And great God, this is an awful place. The place that he had, dreamt of, heaven on earth, this had suddenly become an awful place. And then they had to trudge back again. And that's where they ran into very, very blustery, extremely cold weather, minus 40 degrees centigrade. And he lost one person. That is, Evans died on 17th, 1912, February. Then Oates died. Oates, very, very sad. He had gangrene, and he just said, I'll just go out for a while and come back. And he knew that there was not enough food for everybody. So he decided he would give up his life. He just walked away. And he just died, and he never came back. So there were just 3 people left now. After the first one died early and the second one died, Oates walked away. This is almost like, our Mahabharata, for example. If you look at Shakuntala and all his brothers who were all imprisoned, and there was food given to just one person. And all the brothers decided they would give that food to Shakuntala, and they would fast, so that at least Shakuntala would be alive, rather than all of them trying to share 1/100th of a portion of food that they had. 100 brothers again there. So Shakuntala lived, and he made the dice from the bones of all these brothers and from his father, and he was able to direct the dice to fall any way he wanted. So that is the story about the Mahabharata. Similarly, the way they gave up their lives so that one person could live, Oates walked away thinking at least the other 3 could live. But sadly, that was not to be, and Scott and the other 2 also perished, and this was their grave. That the other people came there, I think, at the end of the year, and they found all their bodies in tents, and they made a sort of a rough grave and stuck a cross on top. Now that was in the year, when was this, 1911, was it? Yeah, that was, so they were buried there, and it was then discovered that over the years, all these graves have sunk. They are about some 50 feet below the surface, and the ice has formed over there. Now, and it's also a part of a glacier. And this glacier is moving towards the sea. And if the same rate is maintained, it is estimated that the iceberg or this glacier will reach the sea in about 250 years' time. And then if it breaks away, this iceberg containing the bodies of these 3 guys will float around until the iceberg melts, and then the bodies will float. So even though Scott lost that adventure to Amundsen, his adventure is still going on actually. And Scott's dying message was, had we lived, I should have had a tale to tell of the hardihood, endurance, and courage of my companions, which would have stirred the heart of every Englishman. These rough notes and our dead bodies must tell the tale. So he left that in his diary, and then this was there. Now Shackleton, meanwhile, South Pole had been discovered, but he wanted to be the first person to cross the Antarctic from one end to the other end through the South Pole. So very, very ambitious program. He led the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. The ship was called the Endurance, and it began in 1914. What happened then is something that is absolutely unbelievable story. Now look at this map carefully. On the top right one, they depart Grytviken whaling station on December 5th, 1914. They enter pack ice almost immediately. 2 days later, they enter pack ice. As they keep sailing, heavier pack ice. Further on, heavier pack ice. Finally, the Endurance is trapped in pack ice on Jan 18, 1915, just about a month and a half after they set sail. Now there's no way. Now the whole ship is sort of drifting along with the ice pack. Whole thing. There's no way they could break away from that. So they're just sort of drifting along. And finally, as the ship was about to be crushed, Shackleton decided, he said, look, we'll take whatever boats we can. We get out. We got into their boats. They actually saw their ship sinking, being crushed and then sinking to the bottom of the sea there. And then with these boats and on these ice packs, they sort of partly sailed and partly flowed to a place called Elephant Island, which is right up there on the left-hand side, vertical arrow showing the Elephant Island. There he left behind some 33 people. And with just 4 others, he said, look, you people stay here, we will come back and rescue you. And these guys who were left on the island had to live on fish and seals and so on for their food. They lived under upturned boats. Underneath that, they were taking shelter. Just imagine the kind of conditions they went through. And Shackleton with 4 others then rowed. It was not a sail, it was a rowboat. I've seen a replica of that boat in the museum. It's hardly about 20 or 25 feet in length. And they actually rowed through some of the roughest seas in the world. And in winter, April 24th to May 10th, 1916, that is winter, they rowed across this and came back to South Georgia. And even when they reached South Georgia, they were not able to land because the water was very, very rough. For 2 days, they were still inside their boats. And finally, they made a landing on the south side, on the west side of this South Georgia. I told you, South Georgia has got this east side and the west side, landed on the south side. No one had ever done a map of South Georgia till then. So they didn't even know what they had to do. Shackleton left behind 3 guys in the boat there, and he and another person crossed, they walked over the mountains, came down on the other side, went to a place called Stromness, and then he begged the Portuguese Navy to give him a tugboat. With that tugboat, he came back, sailed around South Georgia, picked up the 3 men he had left behind on the west side, went back again to Elephant Island, picked up every one of those 33 men, they were still alive, and then went back again. So they were rescued on August the 30th, 1916. They set sail December 5th, 1914. And he rescued them on August 30th, 1916. That's almost, a little more than 2.5 years later. They went back again to England. So that is absolutely amazing story. Then finally he said, no, I'm going again. And even though his health wasn't that good, Rowett funded this. So it was called the Shackleton Rowett Expedition, 1921, on the Quest. The ship was called the Quest. Many former crew members signed up. Just imagine, after what they'd been through, being left stranded on the island, thinking that nobody is going to come and rescue us, and they were rescued, they all signed up. But as soon as they arrived in Rio de Janeiro, Shackleton possibly had a heart attack. He refused treatment and pushed south, arrived in South Georgia on 4th Jan, and next day he died. And when they radioed his wife, Lady Emily Shackleton, she said that, husband's heart lay in South Georgia. Please bury him in South Georgia. And this is the great man's statue there in London, headquarters of Royal Geographical Society. And Sir Raymond Priestley, an author, wrote about Shackleton. He was incomparable in adversity. He was the miracle worker who could save your life against all the odds and long after your number was up. The greatest leader that ever came on God's earth, bar none. And that is me, as I said, grave. And here what we do is, all of us stood around the grave. We were all given Captain Morgan rum, not the spiced Captain Morgan that we get here in India, but Captain Morgan rum in these short glasses. And we had to raise a toast to the great man, drink and leave behind a few drops in the bottom of the glass, and then pour it onto his grave, because the man was so fond of his rum. So that's the ritual that is still followed to this day. Thank you very much. That's the end of my talk. I finished 1 minute later than 7.
That was really wonderful storytelling and accompanied by wonderful photos, sir. We were really blown away with all the images and the stories that you narrated. There is one observation that tomorrow is 14th December, which is 109th anniversary since Amundsen actually landed, and you took us on a virtual tour to Antarctica. So thanks for that. So we are now open for questions. Um so I'd request everyone to post your questions. Okay. From Madhu Kakade, the question is, how many days trip was this?
1 month. I reached there on November 1st. We came back to Ushuaia on November 30th. I came back to Bangalore on December 1st. But we're on the ship for about 25, 26 days because, going and coming and the days that were lost in travel. Otherwise, that many days. And in between the trips, sailing from one island to another island, there were all these guys telling us there was a lovely room underneath in the bottom deck because they had overhead projectors, the screens, the works, and we had stories about seals, about geology, about global warming, about how India broke away from the Antarctic and Indian subcontinent crashed into Asia, and how the Himalayas were formed, and about Photoshop, about composition, about manual mode. There's so many lessons, continuous. You could choose to attend them or not attend them, but it was, it's absolutely wonderful. Not a minute was wasted.
Okay.
Currently, now, you can't go to the Antarctic, as I said. You can go to the Falklands and South Georgia, which is still absolutely magnificent. You can forget about going to the mainland for doing photography. You can go in a cruise ship and watch these from afar, but you can't land there and take photographs anymore. That's what I've been told. I think in 2016 or something, it was banned onward. So you can't go there. I would think it would cost now maybe around 20,000 US dollars. I'm just guessing now. But to go only to the Falklands and South Georgia and back from Ushuaia, and of course flying from here to there and back, I would estimate about $20,000 if you're staying, sharing the room with someone else and on the lower deck.
Question from Chandrasekhar is, how did you manage exposures since it is mostly whites?
Yeah, that's true. Very, very good question actually, because like you said, all whites, you're trying to shoot white against white and so on. So that's where the manual mode comes in very handy. I wasn't too comfortable using manual mode, but there were lessons on manual mode all the time saying this is what you should do. But I used aperture priority and then overexpose sometimes by even 3 stops overexposure to try and get the whites as white. Otherwise, it will show up as grey color. All the whites will show up as grey and so on. So you have to overexpose.
There's one question from my side, sir. Like, it was extremely cold and moist. So, is there any uh, tips? Because battery usually drains very fast, and like you mentioned, like you came back with almost 30,000 photos. So, How did you manage the
You have
storage and battery?
You have to take backup batteries. You have to take backup drive as well. Always back up to 2 drives because this is not a place that you can go back to easily. So always make a backup. Take 2 external hard drives, back up on both. Take extra batteries, stuff them in your pockets, and go. You have to be ready for the cold. Now, the ship is very well equipped for charging all your equipment. Not a problem at all. But yeah, there are lots of hardships there on the ship. Like I said, it's a small ship, not really meant for as a luxury cruise.
You had enough power points there on the ship?
Really, lots of power points in the room, outside the room, everywhere. Lots of-
Okay. A similar question from Backpacker Cross. Please tell about the camera gears you carried.
I just carried 2 bodies because the pressure is on the equipment that you're allowed to take on board the aircraft. You have to beg and plead with these people to allow you to take, saying that you're going to the Antarctic, you're a photographer, show them a few photos on your iPad or something and say, look, this is what I'm capable of doing. So you try and wow them with this and, plead with them so that you can take some. So I had the 1D Mark III at that time and I had a 7D and 100, 400 lens, 500 mm. and a wide angle. That's a 16-28 lens. That's it. And of course, the um, 2x, 1.4x, mainly teleconverters. But most of these creatures come so close to you, actually. You need 100, 400 is more than enough, or a 70, 200 with 100, 400, more than adequate. Mm, might not actually need even the 500, although you can be a little more creative, I would guess, with the 500. Otherwise, not really required. And always take the wide angle with you, because there are lots of areas where you need them, and they add so much drama to the entire.
Okay, the question from BV Prakash: was it possible to see Vinson Massif, the highest mountain in Antarctica?
Sorry, I don't haven't even heard this name. So obviously that means that no, we did not see it. Otherwise, it would have been pointed out to us. Probably it's so far inland that you can't see it from outside. I would think so. I'm just guessing that. But like I said, and we went to only the tip of the Antarctic, to the Antarctic Peninsula, not even to the mainland, as it were. Even though technically we were on the Antarctic mainland, but not really the mainland.
Question from Murli Santanam: fantastic narration and pictures. If you were to go back to Antarctica again, will you go back for photography or for experience?
I will go back for photography, but unfortunately, you can't go to the Antarctic. But I would love to spend 7 to 10 days in the Falklands and a similar amount of time, at least in South Georgia, if not more. So it might again be a 3 week or 20-25 day trip, but still worth it. Just going to the Falklands and South Georgia, and this time I'll be better prepared in terms of knowing what to expect, what sort of gear to take, and I'm experimenting more and more with manual mode, so I think I'll be more comfortable with that sort of a thing. So yeah, I would love to go back
So, any lessons learned while coming back from Antarctica, like which you want to avoid in your next trip?
No, not really. I think all the places were absolutely fantastic, and you're just dying to get off the ship, get into the Zodiac, and go ashore. Uh, Except that food. Maybe you can take a jar of pickle with you if you want. They were very, very kind. They offered me one Tabasco sauce bottle that was mine alone. Nobody else could touch that. And of course, your food restrictions, not a problem. There are lots of vegetarians. My allergies are brinjal, actually. If I eat brinjal, I throw up and make a mess of the whole place. So, no brinjal. It's called aubergine overseas. So, no aubergine brinjals. Otherwise, I'm okay. I don't eat pork or beef or anything. So, it was either chicken or fish. That is fine. No problem at all. Great cooks, wonderful cooks. They really can conjure up some wonderful meals on board the ship. Fantastic.
Okay. Um, a question from Vinod Kumar VK: regular camps are taken, or any particular equipment to shoot there, or what extra care to be taken for cameras, as that is a very cold place. And he has commented a wonderful narration and pictures, sir.
Thank you,
So,
for that compliment. But as I said, these are the two cameras that I had taken then. If I go now, I'd probably take the 5D Mark IV and the 1DX, which is what I have, so I don't get another better camera. But if I can, I would rather, like I said, go with the 300 rather than a 500, 100, 400, 70, 200, and a wide angle. That's what I would do. But protecting the camera is sometimes what happens is you get carried away by the sheer beauty of the place, and you say, to hell with the camera, doesn't matter whatever happens, and go over and take this photograph, and let's see whether I can afford to buy another camera or lens when I get back. But yeah, you need to protect it. You have lots of warm clothing yourself anyway, so you take this like a raincoat sort of a thing, a plastic cover. You cover that, uh, mount it on a tripod, or even if you're lying down, you sort of cover that portion. Only the lens part comes out, and you can take photographs. Yeah, but yeah, it can damage your equipment if you're not careful.
similar question from Kashi Subramaniam: the moisture doesn't affect the gaze or lenses.
No, not really, because you're going from a warm place into a cold place. The room is warm and outside is cold, so it doesn't sort of fog up. It's the opposite. Like if you go from an air-conditioned room into a hot, humid place, like in Sri Lanka, for example, you're in a nice, cold, air-conditioned room, and outside is very, very warm and very humid. Then it can fog up your lenses. So you need to keep your lenses and camera gear outside the room and not take it inside. But here you're doing the opposite, so that doesn't really affect it. The seawater can. Seawater is very, very, it's very unkind to cameras and to lenses and to tripods and so on. So that the seawater that comes in all the time, that can affect. But nothing really happened.
The next question was on my mind as well. The question is from Chetana Siddhagangaya. Were you on a fitness routine? Given the extreme weather and other difficulties, how did you prepare yourself?
Well, I walk even now. I walk 40 kilometers a week. That's my routine. So nothing really special because you're not doing climbing. It's not like mountain climbing or going into an area which is 6,000 or 8,000 or 9,000, 10,000 feet above sea level. It is almost flat. It is sea level itself here, rather than climbing way up mountains. So you don't require any special routine. You hope and pray that you're healthy and you don't have problems like asthma and so on, or you have forgotten your diabetic medication, which you shouldn't if you're a diabetic. Fortunately, I'm not. So I was okay as far as that is concerned. Yeah, but the snow suddenly can give way. You're walking along thinking it's nice. Suddenly, one foot sinks into the snow, and then you pull your leg out, and you find only your foot has come out. The boot is still stuck deep inside. So you have to dive back inside again and then pull the boot out because you can't afford to walk without that boot. So these are, some of the difficulties that you face, but par for the course, I would say. You need to expect this, and you will definitely run into these problems.
We will have last two questions. Question from Hema Narayanan. What was your most exhilarating or memorable moment apart from mixing a piece of the iceberg in a single malt?
There were so many of them. Like I said, going to that place, meeting John Shaw, a legend in whom we had just heard about and read about and so on, to be able to sit close to all these guys and people from all over the world, sitting and talking to them, the great food, the kind of discipline that you need, limited quantity of water for a bath and so on, your toilet also. I'm saying something which may not be very agreeable to everyone, but you can't throw toilet paper into the commode because all that goes into the sea straight away. So you have to, after using the toilet paper, it goes into a bin, and that bin is then taken away. The same thing happened with us in Galapagos. Mr. Jaykumar and I went there. You have to throw the toilet paper after using into a bin, and then that bin is taken away. You can't flush it down because that obviously it's going to soil the whole water. And even our drinking water was actually made from the ocean itself. It was RO water made from the sea, and we had pure drinking water to drink. Otherwise, you can't carry that amount of water for so many people for so long.
We have a question from Prema Kakade. What other exotic places in your bucket list?
Well, funnily enough, that definition of exotic is gone after the Antarctic. But other places that I'd love to see, which I have not seen, surprisingly, have been the Arctic. Mainly because I promised my wife I'd take her, and somehow it hasn't actually happened. She retired earlier this year, and I resigned earlier this year. So maybe next year, if conditions permit, if this COVID disaster goes away. But I'd like to go to the Pantanal, maybe Kamchatka, maybe the snow monkeys, Japan, New Zealand. Love to go to New Zealand just on a wildlife and bird trip. That would be nice. Madagascar, maybe, yes. Okay. Namibia, I've not been to Namibia. I've been to Botswana and South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Nigeria, Ethiopia, but not to Namibia. Love to do that. Quite a few.
So this is the last question from Hardik Shah. So his question is, what is the biggest learning from Mr. Shaw?
Ah, for me, at that time in my learning, because self-taught mainly, I've never attended any classes. This is the class that I signed up for, on the YPS yesterday and today. The first actual class that I'm attending. Otherwise, I've been just reading on my own and so on. So to be with him and learn about layers, where he made it so easy to be comfortable with layers and masks and so on. That was, I think, the best. That's all I can remember now. But it was, when you sit there, you have to lift your jaw off the floor, sort of. So wonderful experience. Really.
Okay. Um, so I think Hardik Shah meant about John Shaw,
Yeah,
whom you met. Okay,
that's
okay,
sure.
okay, sir. So that is the end of the questions. Thank you so much, sir, for presenting wonderful photos.
Wonderful.
I really hope that I get the honor to go with you on one of your expeditions.
That would be
So
wonderful.
that is my personal goal right now.
Let's go to the
So
homeland in South Georgia together.
definitely, sir, definitely. I will have to save up 20,000 USD for that.
Nice thing was then, they agreed for me to pay in installments. So over the year, I went on sending money. Otherwise, they would say, every 3 months you send $4,000. That's $5,000. That becomes difficult. So I sent for over a year. I sent small quantities, and they were nice enough to accept that. It's good.
Okay. For all the viewers who want to follow Dr. Ajit Huilgol, so there is a URL that is coming up on the screen. So you can follow him on Facebook. So and there is a website as well, www.wildandsavage.com. So go and check out the website.
Please don't follow me on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. It was shoved down my throat by the chap who designed this wildandsavage.com. Uh, I don't post anything on Facebook. I may follow Facebook only for to remind me about people's birthdays and so on. Otherwise, no, I'm not on Facebook. Please don't. And Wild and Savage is a rather old website, and I need the help of YPS to, get me someone who can sort of redesign it and redo it from scratch.
Uh, okay, so thank you so much, Ajit sir. So it was really great, like attending your webinar, and I hope all the viewers will be of the same opinion. So it was really very educative and informative. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, and to all our viewers, thank you for joining us. See you same time next week at the same place. So stay home, stay safe. Thank you all. Bye.